In this lecture, we will try to understand a beautiful mechanism in Java programming language, that is exception handling. Of course, you have the same mechanism in C++ programming language, whereas you also have same mechanism in Java programming language. There is a difference in Java programming and C++ programming language. How they differ in terms of exception handling, I will discuss. Time being, just we will try to understand what is exception handling in Java programming language. Later we will compare this particular mechanism with C++ programming language. Let me say like this: exception handling. What it says? Exception handling. When we compile a program, let me say, when we compile a program, just you are compiling a Java program, let me assume. When you compile a program with errors, it does not. Let me assume it has got errors. What type of errors? Compilation errors, isn't it? When we compile a program with errors, it does not compile. It does not compile, isn't it? If your program consists of compilation errors, it does not compile. These compilation errors means this one is compilation errors. These compilation errors are taken care by, who is taking care of these compilation errors? Compiler is taking care of compilation errors. I will repeat: when we compile a program with compilation errors, it does not compile. These compilation errors are takes care by who will take care. These errors can but taken care by the compiler, and the programmer will not the program will not be compiled, isn't it? If you have compilation errors, your program will not compile, does not compile, isn't it? That's what I want to say. Sometimes this is about compilation errors. In a nutshell, I can say compilation errors or compilation errors. Who will take care of these compilation errors? I have compiler to take care of these compilation errors. But it's a big but. Sometimes errors may occur at runtime also. Errors may occur at runtime, even I can say execution time. Runtime or execution time also. These errors, what's the difficulty with errors? Runtime errors. What is the difficulty with the runtime errors? Isn't it? These runtime errors stop the execution of program. They stop the execution of the program. That one must understand, isn't it? But you have to execute program, you need output. Yes, these runtime errors stop the execution of a program, and the execution is terminated, isn't it? Because of these runtime errors, execution is terminated. Execution is terminated. Execution is terminated from the statement. From which statement will it be terminated? From the statement where error has occurred. This point is important, isn't it? I will repeat. The runtime errors stop the execution of a program, and the execution is terminated from the statement where errors has occurred without executing the entire program. The runtime errors, these runtime errors are called exceptions. What is exception? Exception is runtime error. Even in the case of C++, what is exception? Exception means simply it is runtime error. The programmer handled the exception. Now, who has to handle? In the case of compilation error, compiler is there to take care of those errors. But what about runtime errors? The programmer handles. It's a duty of the programmer. It is the duty of the programmer to take care of runtime errors, to take care of exceptions, to take care of runtime errors or exception. Programmer's duty is to handle exceptions. Therefore, I can say the programmer handles the exception. What is the reason to handle this exception? So that program will get executed in smoother manner, so that entire program will get executed, you will get an output. The programmer handles the exception to have the smooth execution till the last statement of the program. For this, Java comes with a very robust exception handling mechanism. The errors, I can write, let me rewrite it. The errors generated at runtime. The errors generated at runtime are called exceptions. That one must understand, isn't it? The errors generated at runtime are called exception. Handling the exceptions explicitly by the program. Programmer has to handle these exceptions explicitly so that all the statements of the program are executed is called exception handling. There are many situations in Java, of course, in any programming language also, where exception may be raised. There may be situations, there may be occasions where exceptions is raised. For example, let me say accessing an element, accessing, you are trying to access an element that does not exist. For simplicity, maybe let me say something like this. For example, I have an array. First location is x0, second location is x1, third location is x2, x3. Let me say there are 4 locations. I am trying to accessing x10. Do you have x10 location? You don't have. You are trying to access an element, otherwise access a location that does not exist. You are trying to access a location that does not exist. In that case, an exception will be raised. I will discuss all these exceptions with the help of simple programs in my next lecture. Now, again, you are connecting to a machine. That does not exist. You are trying to connecting a machine. That does not exist. In that case also, an exception will be generated. How can I connect a machine? How can I connect? I must connect a machine by using IP address. I am trying to connect a machine with particular IP address, but that IP address is not available. I can say in that case also exception will be raised, isn't it? Now, you are trying to open a file. You are trying to open a file that does not exist. Open a file which does not exist, isn't it? In that case also exception will be raised. You are connecting to a database. Which does not exist. In that case also exception will be raised, isn't it? Anyway, as I told you, I will spend lot of time in exceptions, on exceptions in my future classes. Time being, just let me say all the exceptions in Java handled by a superclass throwable. Exceptions can be handled. Can be handled by a class known as, I will repeat, all the exceptions in Java are handled by a superclass throwable. The throwable class has 2 subclasses, exception and error, isn't it? I will repeat, all exceptions in Java are handled by a superclass throwable. The throwable class has two subclasses, exception and error. Exception again has two subclasses. Just see, it has two subclasses. One is IO exception and another one is runtime exception. This can be treated as IO exception. IO exception. This is runtime exception. That I will discuss. What about this error? What's the meaning of this error? What is error? Error means what? In this class, errors error means, I can say, which are beyond the control of programmer. They are beyond the control of the programmer. Programmer cannot do anything if you get these type of errors, isn't it? Errors which are beyond the control of the programmers dealt in this class. Disk full, there may be problems like disk full. There may be problems like disk full and memory not enough. Memory not enough. Isn't disk full means memory is not enough, or of this type, isn't it? Virtual machine error, assertion error, those things I will discuss, isn't it? I can say Java does not provide any mechanism. Let me write otherwise. Let me write Java does not provide any mechanism to handle this. It's beyond, as I told you, beyond the control of the programmer, just like disk full, those things. Isn't it? Just anyway, as I told you, we will try to understand in future classes this. What is IO exception? Exceptions occurring, let me say what we were saying, let me recall it once. All exceptions in Java are handled by a superclass throwable. I am recalling. The throwable class has two subclasses, exception and error. Just see, it has got two subclasses. Exception is one subclass and error is another subclass. Exception again has two subclasses. This is, first one is IO exception and another one is runtime exception. Isn't it? Runtime exception. Exception occurring in the program code at runtime. What is runtime exception? Runtime means these exceptions occur at runtime. These must be handled in this particular class. For example, division by 0, divide by 0. I will discuss all these things in next classes. Division by 0, array index out of bound. You might have heard. Division by 0, array index out of bound exception, array index out of bound exception. These things I will discuss. These type of errors, could be avoided. These errors, this can be avoided. These errors could be avoided if the programmer had taken care of it. These exceptions can be caught. I can say these exceptions can be caught. These exceptions can be handled, isn't it? How these exceptions can be handled, I will discuss. IO exception. What is IO exception? Exceptions occurring while accessing IO devices. Exceptions occurring while accessing IO devices. Input-output devices. File not found. This is an exception. File not found comes under IO exceptions, isn't it? Yes. Now, as I told you, for unchecked exception or runtime exception, which are example for these exceptions, division by 0, array index of bound, there is something like costing, wrong costing will come under this particular exceptions. Just have a brief idea on these exceptions. In my next lecture, in my subsequent lectures, I will discuss all these exceptions with appropriate illustration, with very simple programs. Time being, just understand just how many, what is the hierarchy of these exceptions, just have an idea. For throwable, you have exception and error. As I told you, it's beyond the control of the programmer. These can be handled. How one can handle, we will try to understand. Just go through this lecture. If you have any difficulty, please keep a comment. Thank you very much.